All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Baha Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Baha Hashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give divine honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, I'm just going to simply title this lesson, Are You Ready? It's just something, I found myself thinking about, as we approach, the time of Jacob's trouble, because we're about to approach some very serious times. And this is a question, that first and foremost, I'm asking myself, but, this is something that we should all ask ourselves, are you ready? Because we know the things that are about to befall the planet Earth, but are we truly mentally and spiritually prepared for what's about to take place? So I'm just going to read this article, one of the brothers shared, and I bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And this is from the Michigan Advance. It says, Rogers calls for National Guard deployment to Detroit, drawing sharp criticism from Democrats. It says, U.S. Senate candidate Mike Rogers is urging President Donald Trump to deploy the National Guard to Detroit in response to what he calls a surge in violent crime, prompting backlash from Democratic lawmakers who say such action would repeat historical mistakes. The numbers don't lie. Detroit has become a hub for violent crime. Rogers, a Republican, said in a statement published on his campaign website Thursday, these aren't just statistics. They're people and families whose lives have been flipped upside down because they aren't even safe in their own community anymore. We have got to make our own cities safe again, which these cities, every major cities, not just Detroit, every major city in the United States will never truly be safe. Says despite the assertion, Detroit saw a 19% drop in homicides in 2024 from 252 in 2023 to 203 last year, the lowest rate in more than 50 years. Non-fatal shootings, meanwhile, were down 25% year over year from 804 in 2023 to 606 last year. Regardless, Rogers, a former Michigan congressman, called on Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan to reach out to Trump to request federal intervention. The mayor of Detroit should be on the phone with the president now, calling for backup, Rogers said. Duggan is a lifelong Democrat who is running an independent campaign for governor. When asked to comment, the city's director of media relations, John Roach, emailed the Advance the following statement. Rogers is proving himself just another uninformed, grandstanding politician. In 2013, the city of Detroit had more than 750 carjackings. In 2025, we had 57 as of yesterday, a 90% reduction. Our strong partnership with the U.S. Attorney General Jerome Gordon has just added several more federal prosecutors to drive the violence down even further. The historic drop in Detroit crime in recent years has come from the efforts of serious law enforcement professionals, not from non-serious politicians like Rogers, Roach said. The proposal drew immediate condemnation from U.S. Representative Haley Stevens, Democrat of Birmingham, says who likened the call to the 1967 deployment of the National Guard during the Detroit uprising. And for those that don't know, a riot took place, in Detroit in 1967 which caused a lot of damage, so you can look into that, on your own. It says, a move that resulted in a move that resulted in over 40 deaths and widespread destruction. Mike Rogers just called to deploy the National Guard to Detroit, Stevens said in a statement. Was wrong in 67 and it's wrong now. This is exactly why I introduced a bill to stop Trump's abuse of power, because this chaos won't stop in someone else's community. It'll come to ours unless we do something. Stevens referenced her Stop Trump's Abuse of Power Act bill. Her Stop Trump's Abusive Act. Stevens referenced her Stop Trump's Abuse of Power Act, a bill she introduced earlier this year to limit presidential authority in deploying federal forces domestically without congressional approval. It was referred to the House Armed Services Committee, where it is unlikely to advance in the GOP-controlled House of Representatives. State Senate Mallory McMorrow, Democrat of Royal Oak, also condemned Rogers, referring to her statement last year when Trump, on the campaign trail, denigrated Detroit. Says, as a proud elected representative of tens of thousands of Detroiters, F this guy, don't come back, McMorrow posted. Former Wayne County Health Director Abdul El Sayed, or Syed, however you say it, also issued a statement. Serving the city of Detroit as its health director, even decades after I saw the painful echoes of the summer of 1967. So no, Mike, Detroit doesn't need masked agents cosplaying cops. Michiganders in Detroit and beyond need the Medicaid Trump just cut, the paychecks he's making smaller, and the food he's making less affordable. Stop being a Karen and go back to Florida. Nobody wants you here. Stevens, McMorrow, and El Sayed are all seeking the Democratic nomination in August 2026 primary, along with research health specialist Rachel Howard. And it's just going into, the coming elections, but pretty much, again, this individual here is calling for the National Guard to be deployed to Detroit, which they will be. Don't get it twisted. They will be, regardless if people want them to or not, but at this current time, yes, niggas are running wild here. Crime is still going on here in the city, but it's not on the level as this guy is making it seem, because again, if these stats are correct, crime has went down. So Detroit isn't as bad as it was, because I remember in 2011, Detroit was the murder capital, of the U.S. during that particular time, man, and then even other cities where Detroit, and even other cities, during certain years, were classified as being, the murder capital. But either way it goes, man, this is what's coming to this place, and it is not just going to be the National Guard. It's going to be whoever, just from speculation. I'm not saying this is fact, but, the UN troops, the United Nations troops, the blue hats, if you will, once they send them out, their only objective is going to be either to haul you off to a concentration camp or to execute you on sight, And this is why, again, I pose that question first and foremost to myself, before I ask any other brother, man, are you ready? And this is why we have an advantage over the rest of these people, because we know what's coming. We can see the danger coming. which is why, again, we're blowing that trumpet. We're spiritually blowing that trumpet, you know, about putting out these videos, about warning, our people, even the heathens, man. We're giving that warning. We're letting you know what's about to happen before it happens. Very serious things are about to take place, man. Like the earth is about to experience the worst time ever, man, in history. And I can honestly say, just you Americans, you are not ready, man. You're not ready. You Americans of all nationality, especially you Edomites, man, you've been pampered, for too long. You haven't seen war like these other countries, man. You haven't suffered from famine like these other countries. But the very same thing these other, these third world countries are dealing with are the very things that you Americans are going to have to deal with, man. Famine, pestilence, plague, man. Death, mass death, man. That's what's coming to this place. A lot of you people are going to perish in the time to come. But the minute of the Lord, man, again, I'm asking myself, are you ready? Because this is going to be a very, very serious time that we're about to experience, man. Because again, it's going to be way easier said than done, because we can talk about how bad things are going to be until we're actually experiencing it firsthand, because we know that this is the last few prophecies that have to come to play. It's like they have to come to pass. The time of Jacob's trouble, the mark of the beast, coming to pass, the nuclear destruction, and ultimately our Lord Yahweh Shai, coming back. Are we ready for these things, man? Are we ready? So I'm going to start with the book of Jeremiah chapter 30 in verse 6. And it says, "Ask ye now, and see whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness." So it's going to be so terrible out here that men are going to be like women in those days, man. Because as we know, when a woman is in her 9 months, she's having those birth pains, she's having contractions, and the closer and closer that baby gets to being delivered, the more intense those pains get, So what does she do? She holds her stomach when she feels those pains. But there's going to be a lot of you men out here, man. You're going to be like a woman about to give birth. You're going to be holding your stomach for fear, And if men are going to be afraid, how much more you women? People are going to be afraid, man. Why? Because it's going to be the most terrible time upon the earth. These movies like, The Purge, yeah, they give you a glimpse of how it's going to be, but it's going to be even worse than that, man. Excuse me, slack it, because it's not just going to be for 12 hours. Who knows exactly how long, this particular time is going to, go on. The Lord knows, but as far as us, as mortal beings, we don't know exactly how long this, time of tribulation is going to go on. But, us being the hopefully elect, we just pray that, we're kind of worthy, to escape, the dangers that are coming, and that the Lord delivers us from any danger that comes our way, because we will have to face our particular trials and tribulations. But Lord willing, again, if we're the elect, the Lord is going to deliver us, Verse 7 says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." And right, man, that's the time that we're approaching. Things are increasing, getting increasingly more and more worse, or getting gradually worse and worse, People are crashing out, more and more over simple things, man. Me and them, me and one of the brothers, we was joking about it. Well, we weren't necessarily joking. We was talking about it, before, we got started at camp, man, just how people are losing their minds out here, And one incident, that happened this year, it was a couple months ago or something like that. A guy, he either killed him, if he didn't kill him, but he shot him. It was either uncle who shot his nephew, or I forget, but a man shot, another man over a honey bun, and which, is funny, but at the same time, man, if he's willing to crash out about that before all hell breaks loose, man, how much more when he ain't gonna be able to eat that honey bun, man, because there ain't gonna be none out here, because there is gonna be a famine. And again, you Americans are so used to eating, 3 meals a day, man, it's like you can't go without food, man. People just consistently eat all day, man, which isn't good. But that's going to be the case for a lot of you people, man. You're going to starve to death, So the time of Jacob's trouble, man, is going to be a time like no other, And it says, but he should be saved out of it. The he that is going to be saved out of it is the elect, the 144,000 and the 1/3. They're going to be delivered from their particular trials and tribulations. Whatever comes their way, man, because again, it's going to be bad. We can only speculate exactly how bad it's going to be from what's written in the scriptures, but again, we won't know exactly how bad it's going to be until we're experiencing it firsthand. So I'm going to get the book of Daniel, chapter 12 and verse 1. As you can see, the subtitle reads, The Time of the End, because this is the time that we're in, man. We're in the time of the end, the last days, or as I like to say, the last of the last days, because this has to be it. This is the generation that is going to see our Lord come back, So this is the book of Daniel, chapter 12 and verse 1. And it says, And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that same time, at that time, thy people shall be delivered, every one that should be found written in the book. And right, man, it's going to be so bad upon this earth that Michael the archangel is going to have to step in on behalf of the elect to help them out. Because that's how bad it's going to be, man. It's going to be extremely terrible. Esau, Edom is, he's the Lord is going to allow this man to crash. He's going to allow this man to crash out, on a mass scale, So he's going to have his way. He's going to be, as the Apostle has been saying, man, he's going to mow a lot of you Jakes down, man. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and especially you young niggas, man. I ain't even going, you YNs, you young niggas, because I seen a video of the Apostle at there earlier, where that weirdo Anton Daniels, I guess he was interviewing, which I'll, I may do a separate video on that, but I haven't seen it. But pretty much, just those Jakes in Chicago, they saying, oh, well, we got switches. We ain't scared of Trump. Well, understand this. You little niggas just don't understand, man. Just because you got a switch don't mean a damn thing. You're going to be put up against trained killers. That's what y'all don't understand. You niggas are murderers. Y'all ain't killers, man. So y'all ain't ready. Y'all can sit here and say y'all ain't scared, but we'll see. Keep that same energy once those boys getting sent out there, man. Because it's already came out, the information, which I ended up seeing that video 5 years ago. We had a Jake, he might have been from Chicago. I'm not sure, but he pretty much, brought out the information that you have mercenaries that'll, dress up like rival gangs and go and kill, these different gang members and start gang wars, He said this is what they do. And he wasn't lying, man. It's serious. I truly believe that's what he do, because they have these prosthetic masks that look extremely real, that'll give you the appearance of looking like someone else, So while they're going out starting gang wars, they're out there murdering you, Jakes, and you thinking it's another nigga that's, you know what I'm saying? When the whole time, again, it's mercenaries that's out there. How much more when they don't have to hide anymore, when they can just come and get you, you know? Because this is what's coming. You niggas out there that got these guns. Man, listen, there's nothing wrong with owning a firearm legally, but understand that we can't put our trust in those things, man, you know? Because again, yes, you know, depending on the situation we're in, when that time comes, if you have to defend yourself and your family, by using a modern sword, then by all means. But understand that that's not going to deliver us, man. We need the Lord to deliver us. And that's the one thing we have that these niggas don't have, man. We have the Lord. They don't. Whatever carnal means they have in this world, that's what they got to trust in, man. You know? Because just like it says in the latter part of this verse, man, you know, everyone that should be found written in a book, which is who? The elect, man. Those predestined souls from the beginning, you know, that are going to see the salvation from our Lord. Not only see it, but receive the salvation of our Lord Yahweh Shai when that time comes, man. You know? Because again, man, like this is a very serious time. All you niggas out there, y'all swear up and down y'all ready. Y'all ain't ready. I'll tell you right now, y'all not ready, man. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 12 and verse 12. It says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." And right, man, this is what's about to take place. Primarily the elites, they're going to come down on the people by way of sending out these troops, man, to lock America down, you know, to pretty much get you people ready for the New World Order. Because again, this is ultimately the goals of Esau, man. You know, he's trying to fulfill his New World Order, which the Lord is going to allow him to, you know, only get so far before he takes him out of power, man. You know? So Esau's gonna be doing a lot of unaliving out here. You know? These troops are gonna be doing a lot of unaliving. You know, not just about a gun, man. A lot of you, shit, man. You women, y'all gonna be out here getting taken. You know? You should already know what I mean when I say that. Y'all gonna be getting taken by force. And they gonna do some horrible things to y'all, man. The wicked of you, anyway. They're gonna do some extremely horrible things to you. But it's gonna be your judgment, you know? Because again, a lot of you niggas out there, just like we go into, you know, just about every week, man, you know, we bring it up because again, our people have time to get this word while it's out here, you know, while it's readily available, you know, while YouTube is still up, man. They have videos going out constantly, man, because you have brothers all over the world uploading videos, man, edifying, you know. So there's no excuse for our people to say that they don't know, you know, at least that they're Israelites, you know. Or, you know, you have when we go out on camp, which, you know, us out here in Detroit, you know, we go out on Saturdays, but, you know, brothers in the different states and, you know, the various cities they live in, you know, across the world, they may go out, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, or whichever day, you know, but either way it goes, man, you know, we're still out there. The word is still going out. But our people are going to be, you know, lost until that time comes, man. They're going to die in their sins. But at the end of the day, just like it says in Ezekiel 3 and Ezekiel 33, you know, we're getting the blood off our hands, man, because we're warning you. We're telling you of the things that's about to happen. And it's up to you on whether or not you're going to take heed, you know. So I'm just going to get a few more scriptures and that'll be it, man. But again, we have to ask ourselves, man, look ourselves in the mirror. Are we ready, man? Are you ready? Because these things are coming upon the earth, man. And it's not going to be it's going to be an extremely bad time. So real quick, I'm going to come back to 2nd Esdras chapter 9, verse 1. And it says, he answered me then and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, then thou shalt understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. And right, man, we're starting to see that we're measuring the time. We clearly see that we're in the time of the end. So what are we doing? We're preparing ourselves mentally, spiritually. Hell, you can physically prepare, you can exercise. Just like it says in the scriptures, though bodily exercise profit little, it's still profit, and that's another thing the apostles have been pushing, man, for brothers to, take care of their health, man, to get in shape. Because again, a lot of us are going to have to be on a run, so it's best to stay in the best possible shape, now before all hell breaks loose. You can stock up, a little food, here and there, but just remember, we can't put our trust in these things. And even if you own, firearms or weapons, again, nothing wrong with it, but just remember that that's not going to save us. The Lord is going to save us, Lord willing. So now I'm going to come back to 2nd Esdras chapter 15. And I'll start at verse 4, because again, this is applying to you wicked niggas. It says, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. And right, man, all the unfaithful, those that didn't believe, the wicked of our people, you're going to die in their unfaithfulness, man. Because while right now the word is going out, the men of the Lord are still while the men of the Lord are still out there on the streets teaching, you mock us, you scoff us, you talk shit. But meanwhile, we're warning you, we're telling you, we're trying to prepare you for what's happening, but you don't hear us. Why? Because you've been blinded. So therefore, you're going to die in your sins, man. Verse 5, it says, behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, and the sword, famine, death, and destruction. And right, this is what's coming upon the earth, and we're telling you this, man. We're telling you this. The message has been the same, man. The message has not changed. So what? Let me get Jeremiah 28:8. Jeremiah chapter 28 and verse 8, and it says, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence. Right, man, the message has been the same since old, man. Even the prophets back then have been prophesying of the same thing. Whatever particular kingdom that they were in, whatever country, the message has been the same, man. They've been prophesying of war, evil, and pestilence. And what are we doing in this particular time, man? We're prophesying of war because the Third World War is about to, take place very soon. Evil, the time of Jacob's trouble, is vastly approaching. We're still in the beginning stages, but things are going to get worse. Season of pestilence, man. The various sicknesses, the illnesses that are going to be out here taking people out, man. The message has always remained the same. And we're just saying the same thing the prophets of old have said, man. But again, are we ready? These Americans aren't ready, but us, being the hopefully elect, the true men of the Lord, man, are we ready? Because the Lord is about to plague this place again. I'm going to jump to verse 14. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and verse 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And right, man, this is what's coming. Once all hell breaks loose, you people, you're going to be taking each other out. Why? What's going to be one of the main reasons why people are going to come up against each other? Because it's going to be a famine, you know, a lack of bread and water out here, just using it as an example. But, there's going to be a lack of food. And once the hunger sets in, man, you people, you're going to do things that you never thought you were capable of doing, And it says with swords in their hands. So, America's the most armed nation, in the world. Because again, there are more guns in America than there are people, because just like, Trump is trying to, pretty much, you know, do more gun control due to the last, school shooting that took place, you know, it's not gonna work. You can try and take away people's guns, but it's not gonna work, man. It's not gonna work. People are still gonna get them. So he can try, but again, this is primarily how people are gonna be unaliving each other, man. With live rounds, man. The bullets is gonna fly real soon, man. And a lot of you niggas, y'all gonna catch them too. Verse 16 says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power and right," man. Sedition. People are going to be invading one another, just like it says. So it's like I said at camp, man, like you doomsday preppers, the ones of you that put your information out there, on the forefront, on the internet, showing people what you're stocking up. You have to be some of the dumbest fucking people on the internet, and just got to say it bluntly, man, because again, you're letting the whole world know what you have. So anyone that knows you personally and knows where you live and where you keep your goods, they're going to come see you. And when they come see you, they're going to be armed and they're going to seek to take your life and your goods, just to prolong their life. And just like it says, they should not regard their kings nor princes. So all of these particular, politicians, they're not going to give a damn about the mayor, the governor, the senator, and especially, the president. They're not going to give a damn about what they have to say, man. They're going to take matters into their own hands because people are going to try to survive. That's what it's going to be. For the people out here, they're going to try to survive because it's going to be tough. It's tough now, but again, it's going to be worse. In verse 17, it says, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." Martial law, and this is somewhat what Trump is doing now, which I personally think, this is just him, doing a soft run, deploying the National Guard in, a couple cities, DC, out there in Baltimore, and then he wants to send them to Chicago. This is just a soft run before, he ultimately sends, not just the National Guard, but these troops, whether they be UN troops or they are going to be New World Order troops, but whatever name they go by, they're going to be sent out here. Military checkpoints are going to be set up. You're not going to be able to just freely travel to your neighboring city. You may not even be able to leave your neighborhood, So this is what's coming, man. These military troops are going to be policing the cities, man. And for all of you people out there that thought, the men of the Lord were crazy for talking about, martial law, these various things, in the concentration camps, you laughed. Starting with the apostles and elders on down, you laughed at us, you mocked us, but now you're starting to see it, because a lot of you're going to end up in those concentration camps. A lot of you are going to be put down by these troops, Verse 18, it says, "For because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid." And these cities are going to be troubled, So whatever event takes place to where Trump, declares martial law, and locks the entire nation down. Once he does this, it's going to be the real thing. The C-19, excuse me, event that took place 5 years ago. That was just a test run, just to see if the people would comply. And the most of you Americans, you did, and told you to put the mask on, you did it. Now, obviously, brothers had to do it depending on where they went, just to go grocery shopping and things of that sort. But, they told you people to put the mask on, you did it. They told you to go and get the juice and the booster shots that went with it, you did it, so you're going to comply. So these cities are going to be troubled, man, because you Americans are proud, man, So a lot of you are going to suffer great loss in a time to come, In verse 19, and this will be it. It says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And right, man, people are going to, they're not going to have regard, for their fellow neighbor. They're not going to give a damn anymore. So it doesn't matter if you're cool with your next door neighbor. If you have something that they need, and not only need, but they want, they're going to seek to take it from you by force. They're going to be armed, with guns. They're going to raid your house. They're going to spoil your goods and take you out. Why? Because there's going to be a famine, in the land. The famine is still looming, because I've still been seeing recalls on certain foods, and they still have this I seen it at the grocery store, I think last week, that Impossible Meat bullshit, man, These things are coming, because the grocery stores only have 3 days worth of food in them. And then once all hell breaks loose, that's one of the first places people are going to go, to the store. They're going to loot the stores, man. And then once people go and, loot these stores, they're going to do what? They're going to go back home. And these very same people that have this food that they took, other people that don't have food, they're going to go and take that food from those people, And this isn't just something we're making up. This is what's about to happen. All hell is going to break loose, It's going to be extremely bad out here, So this is why we have to mentally and spiritually prepare for what's about to happen. We're getting our minds right now, This is a part of counting the costs, knowing that we're going to have to lose, everything. Because I also said this, on the way to camp, while speaking to one of the brothers, and, while at camp, because I look forward to the day where I don't have to work anymore, because everyone is going to suffer job loss, once this society collapses fully, Yes, things will be tough, but I'm looking forward to that, man, because again, just this day to day, this matrix, if you will, man, it's like, it's tiring, man. I'm working 6 days a week right now, and I'm pretty sure other brothers, they have their schedule, they're busy as well, but again, the day that we don't have to do this anymore, it'll be a relief, at least to me, So again, are you ready? And I'm asking myself first and foremost, but for brothers out there as well, man, this is what we have to ask ourselves, because we know these people out here, they aren't ready, they aren't prepared, they're going to bug out when that time comes, but are we ready? Do we truly believe that we'll be delivered, during that time, man? Lord willing, we're of the elect, but are we ready? So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of great millstone, who our lent is true from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.